You get some exercise doing that, won't you? Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you. All right, we're in James chapter 4. And let's see, I'm going to read the first 3 verses here. Y'all ready? Everybody at James chapter 4, open your Bibles. James chapter 4. He says, where do wars and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You lust and you do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures. Now I want you to remember that James is talking to Christians, okay? It's always important to always remember that wherever you read in the Bible, know who they're speaking to. And but I want you to know he says among you. So that right there tells us right off the bat James is talking to Christian people. And how many of you made choices this past week? Ryan, did you make any choices? Huh? How many of you made bad choices? Anybody make bad choices this week? Yeah. Have you ever thought about how many choices we make? I mean, have you ever just sat down and already this morning you've made choices? What's some of the choices you made? Come to church. Comb your hair. Get out of bed. Anything else? Brush your teeth. I hope so. Get lunch ready. Any spiritual choices? Who said that? Yeah, that's right. Get right with the Lord before you come. Prayer. Maybe you got up this morning, started reading your Bible. I mean, you think about all the different choices we make, and there's a lot of choices that we make, and we make them nonchalantly, and they really have a big effect on our lives. We don't even think about it when we make a choice. And James is kind of talking about that right there, about the choices we make every day. There's only 2 choices when it comes to how we're going to live our lives. Now, we can choose to live our lives for Jesus, or we can choose to live our lives for ourselves, but we're going to live one way or the other. We only have those 2 choices. How many of you would say today that you're more living to please Jesus and not yourself? Or maybe are you living to please yourself and not Jesus? Because we're doing one or the other. You know, we like to think that we have moments when I did good this time. I did good today. I went to church. My heart was right. I really worshiped the Lord. Monday comes around. I'd rather do this than pray. I'd rather do this than read my Bible. I'd rather do this, or I'm not going to say anything about Jesus and this. But all those different choices we make, so we kind of tend to be wishy-washy and kind of convince ourselves that we're pretty good people, that we're making the right choices all the time. But look, I don't care who you are, you're not always going to make the right choice. And one of the choices that we have to make in life is who we're going to live for and what we're going to live for. And we need to think about that. Because every one of us have made a choice. We've either chosen to live for Jesus, or we're living for the things of God, the things that will glorify God, or we've chosen to live for ourselves and for the world and everything it has to offer us. So I want you to notice that James mentions twice in those verses of Scripture, there are 3 verses right there, twice he mentions the word pleasure. Y'all see that? pleasures. Twice. Now, you may have a King James. If you have a King James, it says lust. It's the same thing. Pleasure or lust is actually the Greek word hedon. You say, well, I don't care about that. Well, you need to, because that's where we get the word pleasure from. It's the Greek word hedon. It's where we get the name hedonist. Y'all know what a hedonist is? Anybody? A person who actually believes, and they live this kind of lifestyle, they teach it, they believe that in the pursuit of pleasure, and that's what's most important in life, is the pursuit of pleasure. And so what does James mean here when he uses the word pleasure or pleasures? Well, he's talking about a lifestyle that desires things in an ungodly manner. He's not saying that God doesn't want us to enjoy things, that we're not having any kind of pleasure. He's saying basically that the pleasures that he's speaking of both times are those of a hedonist or hedonist, whichever way you want to say it, hedonist, is the pursuit of pleasure. In other words, it's desiring things in the wrong way. It's having these pleasures, but you do it in a way in which God never intended for us to find pleasure in it. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, that's what lust is. I mean, the truth is, there's nothing wrong with pleasure in and of itself. Have y'all not noticed the philosophy that we live by today when it comes to certain things? I mean, we see something and what we want, we think is good. So if it's good, then we got to have it. And then when do we want it? Right now. Have y'all? I have noticed that in myself. I blame it on McDonald's and Burger King and places like that through the drive-thru. Y'all remember that? Huh? Just drive through there and get what you want. Now you have all these other things. You see something that you want on Amazon. And if you want it bad enough, you can pay to have it delivered the next day. Or if you see something that you need at Walmart. All these different things, we have to have it. We have to have it right now. There's no self-control when it comes to stuff like that. And we think it's good. And if it's good, then I got to have it. Basically, we're living in a day of instant gratification. That's what it's called. And we're not supposed to wait for anything. And no, we're supposed to have it right now. Why? Because we want it. And that's what a desire for pleasure does to us and how it causes us to think and live. And now listen, it's God. God's the one giving us desire for pleasure. So you say, well, I didn't know that me pleasuring this and pleasuring that is wrong. It's not. I'm not saying that it's wrong. He has so created us that we have a desire for pleasure. And God didn't create us. He didn't create us to be miserable and unhappy all the time. So God's the one who's given us a desire for pleasure. But what we tend to do is we tend to make these pleasures what? Well, we tend to make them the focus of our life. That's what our lives revolve around. And then we tend to develop this hunger for things that bring us the most pleasure on the outside. And it's those things that we allow to control our lives. And then it's those things that drive us away from God. And why? Well, because those things become more important to us than God, and we begin to enjoy the things in a wrong way that God never intended. And I hope that all made sense, because did it make sense? You start off pleasuring something, liking something for the right reason, but all of a sudden it takes over your life. And now what God intended for you to enjoy, now you've put it in place of God. It happens all the time, doesn't it? What are some of the things that we're putting in place of God today, some pleasures? Sports, okay. TV. What's some other things? Phones. Yeah. You know, I'm addicted to crossword puzzle on my phone. I get mad at myself. Word search, excuse me. And it's the advanced word search. I don't like the easy stuff. I want the hard stuff. Tell me some pleasures that we are, man, we started off with them with the right way, and all of a sudden they just kind of took over our life. We're like that, aren't we? I think we all have you hear people say that they have an addictive gene. Man, we're all like that because we can all be addicted to sin. As a matter of fact, we come in the world that way. And but James is talking here about pleasuring things in the wrong way and what it causes in our lives, and he's talking about our war over pleasure and the fact that so many of us we're losing that war and what it's doing to our lives spiritually. So when you look at this and when we study this, you need to kind of examine your life and say, hey, am I allowing these pleasures to overwhelm me, or actually am I using those things in the place of God? So he talks to us about what I call the problems of pleasure. In verse 1, he says, look at what he says. He says, where do wars and fights come from? So right off the bat, you got some problems. Where do wars, now we think about wars, what are we thinking about? We're talking about world wars, aren't we? Talking about wars with Afghanistan or what? No, he's talking about wars in our own lives and fights. He says, where do they come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? So James tells us right here that the problems that come when we make pleasure the driving force in our lives, when we make pleasures the most important thing in our lives. And so we ask the question, where do these wars and where do these fights come from? Where do they come from? And that word wars right there, I want you to know something else, that's present tense. He didn't say what caused that war in your life. No, he says this is something that's going on right now. You say, well, why do I need to know that? Well, how many of you have a war going on with you right now? Anybody in a war? I tell you what, if you're a child of God, you're trying to live for the Lord, you are. And that's present tense. And remember, he's talking to Christians. He's talking to those who make up the Lord's churches. 2 Corinthians 5:17, Paul wrote this. He says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. And that's why we're in the war. Because of what Paul wrote right there. Because you see, when we're saved, we receive this whole new nature, and our new nature wants to love Jesus and serve Jesus and be faithful to Jesus, live for Jesus, but we still have this old nature too, and part of our old nature still wants what the flesh wants and still has a desire for the things that bring us pleasure in the wrong way. And because of all those things, there's a war that wages inside of us. So that's why it's present tense. What causes these wars? He said, that's what he's asking. Where do these wars come from in our lives? And that word war right there means to carry on a campaign. Okay? It's a constant battle. It never stops. So when we come to know Jesus Christ as our Savior, we receive a whole new nature, and then it's the complete opposite of our old nature, and then our new nature, we know in our hearts wants to do right, but that old nature doesn't want to do it, and then all of a sudden we have a war that breaks out, and it's always waging, it's continual, it never stops. And he says again, where do wars and fights come from among you? And that word fights, I hope I put that in your notes, it's differences with other people. So let's go back and think about what he just said. All right, let's just say we have this love for some pleasure in our life. We desire it. There's nothing wrong with it in and of itself, but all of a sudden we've turned it into something wrong because we've made that thing more important than God. And then James asked the question. He said, all right, basically, is there any peace in your life? No. Are you having any troubles with other people? Yes. He said, all right, then where do the wars and the conflict come from among you? What's going on? Why is it there in your life? What are you fighting? Where do the wars and the fights come from? And again, he's talking about differences with other people, with the fights and all that stuff. Have you fought with anybody this week? Other than your spouse? Have you fought with somebody? Huh? People. Michael, you fight with anybody this week? You don't ever say nothing, do you? I try not to. Yeah. Lucas, you fight with anybody? I bet. Oh, you didn't win though, did you? You ain't gonna win that one either. Think about he's talking about problems that we'll have many times in relationships to other people. We're going to talk about some of those things in just a moment, but so you got fights, differences with other people. You got wars that are constant, a continual battle. Look at our lives when we make these pleasures more important than God. So he says, if we choose to live for ourselves and have wrong desires for pleasure, then it's going to cause all kinds of conflicts with people in our lives, because we're going to have to step all over their rights, step all over their feelings and everything else in order to have our way. That's what he's talking about. Look, you think about it like this. You think about somebody who loves a pleasure a lot more than they do other people. Have you ever noticed how other people suffer because of the decision of that one person? It can be an addiction. It could be like alcohol or drugs. You're going to see all kinds of people suffer because of that. But it can be a lot of different things. Sports could be a problem. A TV show can even be a problem. All these different things, but somebody's going to suffer. Something's going to happen because we cannot live to please ourselves. We can't do that and that not cause problems in our relationship with other people in our lives. And listen, if we're going to totally live to please ourselves, then at some point our lives are going to become very displeasing to those around us. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Do you know anybody like that? Somebody that has to have their way, has to have, it's all about what they enjoy doing, and it's always causing problems in the lives of other people. And that's exactly what he's talking about right here. And I tell you, as God's people, there are some things that we never have to be told. And this is one of them. I mean, we know that we should live for Jesus, right? Don't we know that? I mean, you think about what happens so many times in a marriage or in a family or in a church or in a nation, and that's why we see things, these kind of relationships being torn apart in our day, and it's gotten so bad. It really has, because so many of God's people, they're more in love with their desire for pleasure than they are with God himself. And because of that, we have so many problems in these areas. I mean, we do. Just take church, for example. Probably 99.9% of the people that I've experienced that have left this church is simply because they didn't get their way. And they really weren't concerned about what was best for the church as a whole. They just wanted what was best for them. And you hate when those things happen. Or they try to bring certain pleasures into the church that will absolutely ruin it. And you run into these things in life, and if you give in to them, it's going to run a lot of things. It's going to run a whole church. And again, as we as God's people, do I need to tell you that you need to live for Jesus? Does your pastor need to come to you and tell you that? So I look at things a little bit differently. You take people who fall out of fellowship with God, they don't give up, they don't give God his day. It's all about their pleasures and everything else. And people say, you need to go visit them. Well, I don't really need to tell them that they need to live for Jesus if they're a child of God, do I? Do I need to tell them that how many of you have ever been in that situation where you fell out of fellowship with God, or close fellowship with God, you fell out of church? You ever been there? Did anybody, Frida, did I need to come tell you that? You already knew it, didn't you? I was the same way. I knew it. When I was going through that in my life too. And they don't need to be told that. We know that we should live for Jesus. We know that. We don't have to be told that. But so many times, many of us, we live for ourselves, and we know we should put God first in our lives, but we don't. We don't have to be told to do that. We already know that. But so many of us are putting our own pleasures first. And what are we doing? Well, we're just living lives where we're warring and there's conflicts, and so many of us today and it's never going to get better for us if we don't change. So how do I know whether or not that I'm putting these pleasures before God? Well, are you having a lot of problems with relationships with other people? Think about that. Any of that going on? Do I have a problem with, am I having a hard time getting along with people at work, Cameron? But they were wrong, right?
Yeah, I said 5. I'm right or wrong.
Yeah. I want you to just think about that for just a moment, please. You don't need to miss this. And it's so easy, it's hard to explain. Do I have any conflict with people in my life? All right, yes. All right, why? Why is that there? Does that have to do with some pleasure? How many of you ever have problems with your marriage, in your marriage? Anybody ever having problems in your marriage? What are you laughing about? Got one smiling, other one over. Why do we have problems in our marriage? Come on. Is it many times because we want what we want? And why do we want what we want? Because it brings us what? Now, what? But what's all right? There's an issue, but what caused that? What caused that problem? God's not the center of my life. Any marriage can be fixed. You know how? Put God in the center of it. That's it. Because so many times we think that what we just talked about was our problem, but that's not our problem. That's a byproduct of our problem. Is that God's not the center of our life. So if you got problems in your marriage, there you go. That's how you fix it. But if you're too prideful, then you'll never admit the fact that I don't want to get right with God. I'd rather be pleased. I'm going to tell you, living a Christian life is not about being pleased, is it? If you've ever tried to live it, you're not going to be pleased a lot as far as your flesh. Spiritually, you will be. You really will. So James says, you're going to have all kinds of problems in your life with other people if you make pleasures the dominating force in your lives. And I want you to understand that he talks about this warring and fighting and all that stuff. Where there is constant war and fighting, there's never going to be any peace. No matter. There may be a ceasefire, but there won't be any peace. A lot of times what we settle for, instead of eliminating the problem, we'll settle for a ceasefire. You know what I'm talking about? You fight for a little bit, and you say, okay, all right, I'm sorry. So you cease fire, and the next day you bring it back up, and you're at it again. So it's always back and forth. So in your life right now, would you say that you're living more for someone, or like living your life like more like someone who is saved or someone who is lost? I mean, which is it? I guess what I'm asking is, are you more faithful to the world and to the flesh and to the devil than you are to God? Are you somebody that is hard to get along with? They're someone that is always having relationship problems because they're always at odds with other people. I mean, which do you care more about, the things that give you pleasure or the things of God? You say, well, I don't know. Well, which do you spend the most time thinking about and doing? I asked those kids, those teenagers that Wednesday night, I told them, write it down. Write down the things, and write down what you spend the most time doing, and then the second thing that you do the most until you find where you get to God. And then work on getting all these things that's in front of God out of the way so God can be number one. And every one of them that you make out your own list, you'll see that every bit of that's some pleasure that you enjoy. You understand what I'm saying? Can sleep be a pleasure? Too much sleep? See, we don't think about that. Yeah, all that can be a pleasure. Can gossiping be a pleasure? Oh, I just feel so good. Gossiping. It can be if things are not good at home, you want to be working all the time. But this is actually a very serious problem in the lives of a lot of God's people. And we never even look at it, and we never even think about it like that, that we're going to be either one way or the other. Look at verse 2. He says, you lust and you do not have, you murder and covet and cannot obtain, you fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. Well, he's talking about how pleasure can destroy our lives. He says, you lust and you do not have. That word lust there is, it's a picture of a heat. Like a deep desire. It's a burning desire for something that you think will bring you pleasure. It's where we get the English word thermometer. If you want to know how we got thermometer, there it is right there. It's that Greek word for lust, because there are about 3 or 4 different words for lust in the Greek language, but that's where we get the word thermometer. So I'm fixing to go turn up the lust. Turn down on the wall. Thermometer. Now, we know what a thermometer is. It can either be high or low. It can be either hot or cold. We get red hot over something. We get this burning desire for some pleasure. This pleasure has now become something that we hunger so much for. And, buddy, it's getting ready to start taking over our lives. And then our lives revolve around it, and that's all we think about. It's all we can never get enough of it. And yet James says, you lust and do not have. That's what he means. It never satisfies. It never brings you you're not settled in any way. So here's a sad picture of a Christian who knows they're supposed to live for Jesus, but they've given into their lust and their desire for pleasure. And what they've decided to do is they decide, well, I'm just going to live for that pleasure or those pleasures. They've decided that the most important thing in their life is for them to try and satisfy their desires and please themselves, but it always leaves them with nothing. You ever noticed that? I gave the teenagers this example. It wasn't exact. We wasn't in the book of James, and we're talking about, but it's the same thing. Some of us have a desire for alcohol, and it can be a very strong desire. You ever notice how they make alcohol look like it's a lot of fun? You ever seen commercials? Everybody sitting around a campfire or whatever, and having a good time. Now, and you look so satisfying. But is it? The Bible, I think it's Proverbs 23, where it talks about that. It talks about the wine, about the drinking of the wine, the redness of eyes, all the different things, and what it brings to your life. And then at the end, it says you sit there and you're just waiting for another drink. Why? Because it never satisfies. If something satisfies, you can take it one time, and that's all you need from here on out. But you see, they portray this thing as being something where you'll find satisfaction. What they don't tell you is about alcoholics who beat up their spouses, who beat their kids. They don't show you people who are being killed by drunk drivers, do they? They don't show you all those. So it's all a lie. So here's a child of God who's decided, you know what? This pleasures me so much that I think that's exactly where I'm going to find my satisfaction. So I'm going to put that first in my life, and I'm going to have all kinds of problems with my relationships with other people because I just focus on me and my desire to satisfy what I want, but you never find it. Never happens. Listen, when we make the pleasure the most important thing in our lives, you're not going to have any personal peace. And I'm going to tell you, if you know what personal peace is, it's an addictive thing. It's a good addiction because that's all you want. How many of you have personal peace? Anybody? Raise your hand if you have peace in your life. My life. Personally, I am at peace. That's a spiritual peace. That's the only kind you're going to find. All right, if there's not, then why? Why? And whatever you do, don't blame it on somebody. Is it because of something that you enjoy doing? Some pleasure. I just want you to think about that. I'm going to leave that with you because it's 35 after. People be walking in here. But you think about that this way. Do I have a personal peace? If not, then why? I guarantee it's because of some pleasure that we enjoy. And it's causing problems in our lives spiritually. Maybe it's not a bad pleasure, but we've made it bad. And don't lose those, because I probably won't have any more next week.